Hi friends! Do you want your stress to go away? I certainly do. If that is you, then you should learn about cortisol, which is an essential hormone that can cause chronic stress and chronic inflammation. Now, if you eat this orange, you can actually lower your cortisol. But if you eat this orange, you're gonna elevate your cortisol. Do you know why? I'll let you think about that. Most Americans are walking around with excess cortisol. So how much is too much? That depends. It's different for everybody. And that really depends on your lifestyle. So if you're an athlete, you're gonna need more cortisol during your practice and competitions. But when you stop, your cortisol should come down. And if it doesn't, you're not gonna feel so good because your heart will be racing, your blood pressure will be sky high, and your mood will be anxious. And this is what is happening to millions of Americans who aren't athletes, but they have high cortisol levels. The good news is there are many things that you can do, including foods that you can eat and activities that you can participate in to lower your cortisol today. This will help you feel better and slow down aging. Remember, this isn't medical advice. Don't change your medications or your diet until you've talked to your own personal medical doctor. Now, having high cortisol levels is a problem because this actually decreases your immunity to increase your cancer risk as well as your infection risk. And in addition, you're going to start losing muscle as well as bone mass. But you're going to add more fat mass, worsening blood pressure, mood, and skin health. Sounds like aging, doesn't it? But you have the power to dramatically slow down aging by controlling your cortisol. And in the end, you're going to be able to make the best food choices and not fall prey to social media gimmicks. Now, many families, they start off the day with a glass of orange juice instead of eating a fresh orange. I always start my day off with whole fruits. But this orange is a sugary slice of orange that has 13 grams of added sugar per servings. And it's not just in these orange slices, it's in a lot of sugary flavored drinks. You may avoid sugar, but eating refined white pasta, white bread, white rice, they can also trigger cortisol release if you're eating an excess amount of them. And several biochemical and physiological pathways get activated, primarily because of glucose regulation, insulin signaling, and this triggers inflammation through the gut-brain axis. High sugar spikes lead to high insulin spikes, which subsequently leads to low glucose, which then triggers counter-regulatory stress responses. Now, the adrenal glands releases cortisol because it's trying to help you restore your sugar levels. And this stimulates gluconeogenesis for the liver to produce glucose through fat or protein. This cycle is exacerbated by frequent sugar consumption, leading to chronic cortisol elevation. So this is refined sugary diets, processed carbohydrates, which increases cortisol, and you can bypass this if you eat more complex carbohydrates with fiber. And this is why orange flavored sugary drinks is worse than drinking orange juice. And this is also why eating orange candies full of added sugar is worse than eating a whole orange. But when you're insulin sensitive, you can actually eat these foods and not have this abnormally high insulin response. And therefore, you don't have the abnormally low glucose response to then cause elevated cortisol. And the way to get insulin sensitive is to remove fat from parts of the body that shouldn't have fat. And this is in your muscle and your gut and your liver and your pancreas. And this is why when you simply lose weight, you become more insulin sensitive. But if you lose weight the wrong way, you can actually make you yourself more insulin resistant, and you'd be masking it if you avoid eating carbohydrates. And when you're more insulin resistant, that actually helps the sugar hang around longer when you do eat carbs. This increases cytokines like tumor necrosis factor or interleukin-6, and this increases oxidative stress and inflammation. This directly triggers the hypothalamic pituitary axis, leading to higher cortisol levels. Therefore, chronic sugar consumption leads to higher systemic inflammation and higher cortisol levels. This is why it's important to eliminate chemicalized sugar, or at least to minimize it, because you can also mess up your gut microbiome. When you eat sugar, you actually grow pathogenic bacteria and reduce beneficial species like lactobacillus. And this is a problem because this irritates your intestine. It causes you to potentially have a leaky gut. We call it intestinal permeability, which then leaks endotoxins or lipopolysaccharide that are found in pathogenic bacteria. When it goes in your bloodstream, this further induces inflammation. And the more inflammation you have, the higher your body responds with more cortisol. So if you're consuming sugar in any form, whether that's table sugar or high fructose corn syrup or syrups and sodas, that fructose, it stimulates 11-beta-HSD1, an enzyme that converts inactive cortisone into active cortisol in fat cells. And this then also leads to higher cortisol levels from your visceral fat. And the more visceral fat you have, the more cortisol you will release. This is why people with beer bellies have more inflammation. And it's worse if you eat at night against your circadian rhythm. Normally, cortisol levels should be low in the evening to help you go to sleep. It helps you calm down when it's low. But if you're going to eat off your circadian rhythm, especially processed sugar like desserts, pies, ice creams, this can actually trigger nighttime cortisol spikes, which will affect your sleep quality. Hence, it's important not to eat late at night. But don't confuse added sugar or high fructose corn syrup with eating whole fruit. Now, when you eat whole fruit during the daytime, of course, like this orange, you actually can lose weight, improve your blood sugars, improve your diabetes, improve your blood flow, and reduce your inflammation. And if you don't have diabetes, it actually protects you from becoming insulin resistant to get diabetes. Now, consuming whole fresh fruit is not the same as processed foods, even though it has fructose. Your liver is actually shielded from this fructose by your gut because it's trapped in fiber, so that the fructose is slowly released to your gut so that your gut has time to shield your liver. But if you overwhelm the gut with liquid fructose or added fructose in candies, even though it's fruit candies, or an apple pie, that fructose in the form of table sugar, that goes directly into your liver. And unfortunately, fructose is a known toxin. It makes your liver fatty, which then is the first step to insulin resistance. This is why it's important that if you're going to drink an orange juice, make sure that your orange juice has no added sugar and pick the ones with added pulp because you get more fiber. But it's always preferable to eat the whole orange as the fiber is already intact. And oranges, like many other citrus fruits, like let's say tangerines and grapefruits, have vitamin C, which is lost when you process it through pasteurization. But pasteurization is important if you're going to be buying commercially made orange juice because pasteurization kills a lot of the germs. Sometimes orange juice can be contaminated with pathogenic bacteria like salmonella. So fun fact, oranges and lemons and citrus fruits in general are actually not the highest sources of vitamin C, even though they taste sour. Most of that sourness comes from citric acid, which is different from ascorbic acid or vitamin C. Kiwis have twice as much vitamin C compared to an orange, and bell peppers have triple the amount of vitamin C compared to an orange. In fact, vitamin C was isolated from paprika, which is a pepper. So when you sprinkle paprika, you're going to get a tiny amount of vitamin C. In your body, vitamin C is concentrated in your adrenal cortex, where it regulates cortisol synthesis. The adrenal glands actually can store some vitamin C and use it as a cofactor for dopamine B hydroxylase, which converts dopamine to norepinephrine, a key stress hormone that helps you deal with life. Norepinephrine is also known as noradrenaline, which is a hormone as well as a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in your body's fight or flight response. This is what makes you run away in danger, and you can't do it unless you can figure out how to increase your heart rate and your blood pressure and your alertness. That's what cortisol does. But when it doesn't go away, it can actually make your mood more anxious, affect your memory, as well as your sleep-wake cycle. So you can imagine that if you have sustained high levels of cortisol and norepinephrine, you're going to have a difficult time falling asleep. You're going to feel anxious, depressed, and have attention deficit. And when you have persistently high blood pressure, you actually have less perfusion to your skin, which leads to dry, chapped skin and potentially non-healing wounds. And if the stress doesn't get relieved, you affect your perfusion to your gut. And this was all perfectly designed to help you run away from danger. But what if the danger never goes away and you're constantly in that stress mode? That would really affect how you digest your meals. And this is what happens when you have excess cortisol. Now, there's a syndrome called Cushing syndrome in which there's excess cortisol. And when you have excess cortisol, you get elevated blood sugars and insulin resistance, prediabetes or diabetes. It can also lead to muscle breakdown or muscle wasting. It can suppress your immune system, leading to more infectious diseases. And the last thing is it can redistribute your fat, causing moon facies, a hump in between your shoulder blades, and it increases your blood pressure because cortisol makes you retain sodium and pee out potassium. People also have bone changes because it prevents the bone from remodeling, causing calcium to leach and brittle bones. And generally, people have a physical characteristic appearance of central obesity, very round moon facies, and very skinny arms and legs. Sometimes also their skin will be very fragile. They'll have difficulty healing wounds or stretch marks, really severe stretch mark from weak collagen. And it's classically purple stretch marks because they easily bruise. Now, if you're suspecting that you may have this syndrome, please see your own medical doctor. There are different reasons to have this. The most common reason is probably because a lot of people are taking steroids. Chronic steroids can cause all these characteristics, but it's important that you don't just stop your steroids. That can actually be life-threatening because once you start taking it, you actually suppress your body's ability to make cortisol. So it's important that you get with your own personal medical provider to taper it to a dose that you need. And if you're not taking medications, then there are various lab tests that your doctor can perform to see if you have excess cortisol being secreted. And if they do find that to be a fact, then sometimes you have to have head imaging because sometimes there may be an abnormality in the pituitary gland. Oftentimes, people also have memory issues, brain fog, and difficulty concentrating. They have mood issues with depression, anxiety, or irritability. These are all common when they have high cortisol levels. And of course, this will disturb their sleep, their circadian rhythm, and affect their hormones, causing menstrual irregularities and reproductive issues. In women, this could cause irregular or absent periods, and in men, it could cause erectile dysfunction. 42% of Americans eat a vitamin C deficient diet because they don't eat any fresh fruits and vegetables. The adrenal gland only makes cortisol in response to your brain, specifically from the pituitary gland that makes ACTH. However, the production of ACTH is in response to your CRH, which is a hormone from the hypothalamus. So high vitamin C levels inhibit excessive hypothalamic pituitary adrenal activation by reducing CRH hormones and ACTH secretion. Cortisol synthesis also requires cytochrome P450 enzymes that are in the adrenal cortex, and vitamin C enhances the activity of certain cytochrome C50 enzymes, which converts 11-deoxycortisol to cortisol. And by eating a vitamin C-rich diet throughout the day, you can modulate cortisol synthesis by inhibiting excessive hypothalamic pituitary axis activation. This lowers stress-induced cortisol release. This overall reduces oxidative stress in the adrenal glands to prevent excess cortisol production. Now, did your grandparents have to learn these biochemical pathways in order to eat some fresh fruits and veggies? No, they knew to eat the fresh fruit and veggies because they knew that they were essential to survive. And I'm sure they heard of the Limey diet. 2 million Limey sailors between the 16th to 18th century learned the hard way that if you avoid fresh fruits and vegetables, you're gonna get really sick and not make it. That is scurvy. Imagine that stress that they were under. Today, half of America is eating a Limey diet because somehow society has convinced them that the rules of nutrition just don't apply. Or maybe they falsely believed that processed foods add enough vitamins or that animal meats are the perfect food. That's exactly what Limeys ate. And we're also wondering why society is getting more violent and why we have a mental health crisis where people are on the edge all the time and being downright mean to each other. Literally, they've done studies on prisoners. By serving them more fresh fruits and vegetables, as opposed to processed foods that we feed our children, they actually have less violent reactions. Unfortunately, we can't lavage fruits and vegetables in people without feeding tubes. And when you do earn that feeding tube, well, the healthcare system won't give you fresh fruits and vegetables because they're going to give you processed nutritional shakes and supplements, which young, healthy people are willing to go and eat on their own. Go figure.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And if I don't get my diet right, I'll also be earning a feeding tube and nutritional supplements too. I'm trying very hard for that not to happen. Hence, it's important to target magnesium-rich foods like leafy greens and nuts. Magnesium plays a crucial role in regulating the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which controls cortisol secretion. Magnesium inhibits excessive activation of this axis and thereby reducing the release of CRH, or the corticotropin-releasing hormone, from the hypothalamus. Magnesium also acts as a natural NMDA receptor antagonist to counteract glutamate. High NMDA activity via excessive glutamate can overstimulate the brain and increase CRH hormone secretion, leading to an elevated cortisol secretion. So by blocking NMDA receptors, magnesium effectively dampens the stress response. Magnesium also reduces the sensitivity of adrenal glands to ACTH, therefore lowering cortisol production. It's ironic that chronic stress actually depletes magnesium because it makes you pee it out via activation of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. And this creates a vicious cycle of magnesium deficiency, which further increases cortisol secretion. So not only is America stressed out, but we're also peeing more magnesium, and we're also not eating enough magnesium to meet our daily needs. Magnesium is the fourth most common cation in the body, the second most common cation in your cells. You literally have 25 grams of magnesium in your body, and much of it is stored in your bones. Now, we can check a magnesium blood level, but it's not accurate. It doesn't reflect your body's magnesium stores, because when you run out in your blood, it borrows it from your bones. Eventually, you're going to go empty. That's osteoporosis. That's waking up one day with a fracture. Now, our food is also magnesium deficient. The erosion of heavy metals due to soil contamination and the lack of replenishing our soils with magnesium really means that we're eating less magnesium in our natural foods, less than what your grandparents ate. We have a nation of subclinical or silent macronutrient deficiencies that are super hard to diagnose, but we all know intuitively that they all contribute to chronic disease. But somehow, in order for institutions to take action, we need randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. And in the meantime, everybody's stuck in a deficient bucket that overwhelms our medical system. Our public health crisis is under everybody's radar, except for yours. So make sure that you are getting plenty of leafy green vegetables and nuts. And chances are, you may think you're eating enough, but you're probably like everybody else. We just don't have enough leafy greens. So whatever you're eating right now, double it. There's a lot of controversy on whether or not you should eat fat in your diet. But really, there's no controversy that omega-3 fatty acids are essential, and most Americans are deficient. When was the last time you got your omega-3 fats checked? You can do that. When was the last time you ate some walnuts or chia seeds or flax seeds or seafood? These foods are rich in omega-3 fats. That's not in your meat or cheese, despite what influencers tell you. Even if you eat grass-fed products. Okay, let's say you take 100 grams, it has roughly about 120 milligrams of omega-3 fats. Now, if you ate a tablespoon of flax seeds, that has 2,350 milligrams of omega-3 fats. It's like comparing pennies versus a $100 bill. Which one will fill your piggy bank faster? Which one do you want to eat for omega-3s? I'm not eating that beef. This is also true for grass-fed cheeses. Let's say you ate an ounce of cheese. You would be far better off eating 100 grams of salmon, which has 2,500 milligrams of omega-3 fats. Are you really going to eat that much cheese? Do you see the illogical logic of social media influencers who are trying to get you to eat more red meat and cheese? We know that red meat causes actually your cortisol levels to go up when you consume it in excess. This is because red meat causes metabolic changes, inflammatory changes, and our hormonal changes. And of course, the degree of these changes reflects what the animal was fed, as well as how much you're eating, how you're cooking it, and what else you're eating with it. And this is because red meat is high in protein, which increases glucagon. Glucagon is a hormone that works together with cortisol to maintain your blood glucose via gluconeogenesis in your liver. And gluconeogenesis is a process in which your body can break down your muscle tissues to then make amino acids, to then stimulate glucagon release, which then tells your liver to convert that amino acid into glucose. This activates cortisol. Cortisol supports this process by mobilizing more amino acids, fats, and glycogen. Hence, excess cortisol causes muscle breakdown and atrophy. And if you are focusing on protein intake, intake, you can have prolonged cortisol elevation because excess protein also becomes fat. Now, if you want to keep your stress levels down, then you have to think of ways to reduce oxidative stress in your body. Oxidation is just a natural process of life. It's like rusting that happens inside our bodies. Imagine leaving a shiny metal toy outside in the rain. After a while, it turns rusty, right? And this happens because the metal reacts with oxygen in the air, changing the metal. And in your body, oxidation happens when certain chemicals react with oxygen. They're exchanging electrons. By doing so, this can cause damage, kind of like how rust damages metal. Chemicals get oxidized because they want to be more stable. So atoms and molecules are always trying to balance their electrons. So when oxygen steals electrons from them, they change in the process. And this is called oxidation. And when oxidation happens inside your body, it actually can damage your cells, as well as your proteins, your DNA, and this leads to aging and diseases like cancer and heart problems. Think of it like a bruised apple. When you cut an apple and leave it out, it turns brown. That's oxidation at work. And inside your body, as well as mine, there are many chemicals that get oxidized. Fat gets oxidized. I'm sure you know what old fatty food smells like. It's rancid. And this can happen in your body too. Now, iron in your blood likes to bind to oxygen to help carry the oxygen, but excess iron can cause excess oxidation that can damage cells. Sugar can get oxidized. Too much sugar in your blood basically leads to oxidation, which can damage your blood vessels, making them hard and increasing your blood pressure. When you increase your blood pressure, you reduce your blood flow. Hence, it's important to eat antioxidant-rich foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, and green tea. Antioxidants work like bodyguards, protecting your cells from being rusted by oxidation. But it's also important to keep things that get easily oxidized at a minimum, like red meat. Red meat has heme iron that promotes the production of reactive oxygen species. This is a stress that stimulates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis to lead to increased cortisol secretion. So if you're eating frequent red meat, like burgers and hot dogs, especially processed meats, you can increase oxidative stress. Diets high in red meat, especially processed meat, they also alter your gut microbiota. This can increase pathogenic gram-negative bacteria, which then can increase release of lipopolysaccharide to cause systemic inflammation, which again activates a hypothalamic pituitary axis, leading to higher cortisol levels. Hence, this is another reason to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, especially when you eat red meat. Now, every single meal I start with some fresh fruits and vegetables because these are rich in fiber and polyphenols that serve as antioxidants to help mitigate the oxidative stress by other foods. And this helps you maintain a healthier microbiome. Red meat is also high in saturated fat. High saturated fat intake, which is common really in any meat, can elevate cortisol levels. And studies show that high-fat meals, especially those rich in saturated fat, they increase cortisol post your meal. Saturated fat stimulates the endoplasmic reticulum to then stimulate the stress response to cause inflammatory cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha or interleukin 6 that then activates your HPA axis that induces more cortisol. And sure, you can get grass-fed red meat, but it doesn't take away the high saturated fat problem. A better fat profile would be eating more omega-3 fats. And you can do that by eating grass-fed meat, but it's still very little omega-3 fats. And most of it is saturated fat, especially that prize Kobe beef that people like to eat. The amount of omega-3s in red meat, remember, is minuscule. But red meat is rich in methionine, an amino acid involved in methylation reactions. Now, excess methionine actually can increase homocysteine levels, which may contribute to the hypothalamic pituitary axis overactivity, stimulating more cortisol. And a balanced intake of B vitamins, such as B6, B9, and B12, can help to balance this effect. How many people are trying to lower their insulin and blood sugars with very restrictive diets like high protein, low carb, red meat diets? When you remove carbohydrates, you will definitely lower your insulin levels, but it may be so low that cortisol may be released to help you maintain your blood glucose. You still need glucose, no matter what your diet. So your body will activate gluconeogenesis to make glucose on its own. By eating a more well-balanced diet, combining your red meat with fiber-rich vegetables and fruits, as well as healthy whole carbs, can mitigate this effect. Now, depending on how you cook the meat, you may be making more stress in your body in the form of advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. So whenever you grill, you fry, or you char your red meat at high temperature, you're creating more advanced glycation end products. AGEs promote oxidative stress. increase in inflammation, which we all know now, stimulates cortisol release. Inflammatory cytokines like tumor necrosis alpha and interleukin-1 beta activate the HPA axis to increase cortisol, but boiling, slow cooking, and steaming red meat can help to reduce AGE formation. And we talked about magnesium, vitamin C, and omega-3s. These are all important to get daily in every single meal. And it seems like a pretty daunting task unless you make it a point to add whole food plants to all your meals. And by eating whole food plants, you prevent the rapid blood sugar spikes, which then lowers the need for a stress-induced cortisol release. Now, many whole food plant foods are generally low glycemic index foods, especially when you don't eat it processed. This leads to a gradual exposure of the sugar inside the food, which then doesn't stimulate that hypothalamic pituitary axis activation or adrenal cortisol secretion. Whole food plants are rich in antioxidants, such as polyphenols and flavonoids and vitamin C and vitamin E, which can help to neutralize oxidative stress to lower inflammatory cytokines like interleukin-6 or TNF-alpha and CRP. And remember, diversity is key when it comes to eating because not all plants have omega-3s. So you have to focus on seeds like flax seeds, walnuts, and chia seeds, which can further reduce inflammation and lower cortisol production. And the benefits don't stop there. When you eat whole food plants, you support your brain-gut axis. These plants are fiber-rich, and when you consume a diversity of these foods, such as legumes and whole grains and vegetables and fruits, you will nourish a variety of different gut microbes that produce a variety of short-chain fatty acids like butyrate to then further reduce your stress and cortisol release. And this all benefits and prevents leaky gut. But remember, keep it low on saturated fat, because even plants have saturated fat like palm kernels and coconut. Saturated fat, whether it's from an animal or plant source, increases endotoxin leakage that can trigger and activate cortisol release. You can counteract some of this by eating a variety of whole food plants such as leafy greens, seeds, and legumes, because when you do that, you get the fiber, you get the antioxidants, you get magnesium, which support your GABA neurotransmitter function to promote relaxation in your body, lower your nighttime cortisol so that you can sleep better. And in addition, many whole food plants contain tryptophan, such as bananas, nuts, and oats, that increase your serotonin and melatonin to help improve your sleep and cortisol regulation. And when you lower your cortisol, you can actually improve reproductive hormones such as estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone that can help with fertility issues. And if you're postmenopausal, consumption of phytoestrogens through flax seeds and soy can help regulate hormonal fluctuations during your transition. Plants basically help us to be more stress resilient, but certain plants are more beneficial than others. And if you want to target polyphenols, then make sure to incorporate a variety of berries, dark chocolate, and green tea. This really should be in everybody's daily diet to not only improve cortisol levels, but also to improve our mood. And when you target omega-3 rich foods, remember to keep your omega-6 fats low. If you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.